Belos here. Thorne.
Here.
Cruz.
Here. I'm here. And for everybody, so I'm Kyle, I'm one of the attorneys that represents the town.
All right. Okay, so that we have a few agenda items here. Call the order, roll call, pledge allegiance. I'd like at this point in time to approve the agenda. Number 5 is consider return interim zoning ordinance for adoption. Number 6, we put a public comment on the insurance. So, to the board to approve the agenda at this time. Yeah, so discussion, there's discussion on it, I mean, what we...
So it's a special meeting, and given that you don't have a full, you can get more than change that.
Okay.
So,
Enough said. Yes. I vote yes. Any other discussion? No? Okay.
Thorne.
Yes.
Anderson.
yes.
Cushman.
Yes.
Absent. Rasmussen.
Yes.
Rico, yes. Cruz.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, that brings us into, so the improvement of the agenda is done. That brings us to number 5, which is going to be a long one. We're going to hand this over to Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Supervisor. Before I get into that, one thing I did want to do, I do follow the newspaper, which is has been fun to read and it's been interesting to follow. But I did see the newspaper, and I think, just for the clarity of the public, on Saturday, the board went into closed session with the township attorney. What they did, and I'm going to base the reference in, is the under citation MCL 15.26818. That's to consider material exempt from disclosure by statute. They discussed the confidential or legal opinion. So it wasn't necessarily just a discussion with the attorney, it was to discuss the content of the confidential legal opinion, and see if any of the board members will shake their heads. That's what they did. They talked about the legal opinion with the attorney. We can't talk about what's in the legal opinion because it's subject to attorney-client privilege, but that was the purpose of that. I just wanted to make the clarity that it was to meet with the attorney to talk about the legal opinion and the citation offered. So, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about consider interim zoning ordinance adoption. So, on Saturday, the board made a motion to direct the planning commission to come up with what is a recommendation for what is called an interim zoning ordinance. An interim zoning ordinance is authorized under Section 404 of the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. It is what has been considered a stopgap zoning ordinance for communities that want to regulate their land use decisions locally. It is intended to be in place for a maximum of 3 years before a community adopts what is called an initial zoning ordinance, or a zoning ordinance, for lack of a better word. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, this function is based on the Township Control over zoning. Many charter townships do handle their own zoning and planning at the local level. My understanding of the history of the township, 20 to 30 years ago, they actually considered adopting their own zoning ordinance as well as master plan, and kind of just reviewing some of the historical files. So it's not a precedent for the township to follow. Many townships want to have land use decisions come to them, so they are reviewed by individuals that likely know and are very familiar with the community, that are electors of the community, that live in the community, that may work in the community, that are maybe more familiar than what you would see on the county planning commission, where you may only have one representative, for example, or may have none. So the overall process of this in Section 404 of the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act is the township board directs the planning commission as to provisions for an interim zoning ordinance. I know we have Mr. Cushman, I'll let him, I'm going to give my spiel, and then you can give a spiel as a little bit of a planning commission did earlier today. But they direct the planning commission to consider provisions of interim zoning ordinance. This township was unique in the process where it came up with a working group to essentially work with a professional planner, Williams and works Grand Rapids professional planner anymore, to develop an interim zoning ordinance, at least document the planning commission they consider what my understanding is, and you see it in front of them, there was a green copy of the interim zoning ordinance, a red line that shows the changes from the Costa County zoning ordinance, and then the zoning act, and shows what the zoning act looks like. All of them are heavily based on the current county zoning ordinance, which I think is pretty smart in this position, because you have a number of people that are already used to applying the county zoning ordinance and the content of the county zoning ordinance in the township. And again, the interim zoning ordinance is meant as a stopgap. It is meant as a time to take local control over zoning yourself, and then consider more permanent solutions with respect to the zoning later. So it's you're not necessarily going to get all the kinks out, but being based off the county zoning ordinance is, in my experience, better than let's have a planner use their template that, maybe they're using in California or something, and we find out that doesn't work in a community like Richard. So, planning commission reviewed the interim zoning ordinance. They have electronic copies, they have paper copies, and they have recommended its adoption to the township board. The other thing they did is they transmitted it to the county zoning commission, the county planning commission, to consider, essentially what the statute talks about is making where the county planning commission can coordinate with local bordering townships and other municipalities as to essentially zoning that is reflective of those borders, where you're not trying to have drastic differences. Of course, that's not binding. That's also not binding whether the county planning commission, can make changes to what the township is wanting to do. One thing they also, the township did, is ask for any comments from the county planning commission with respect to the zoning ordinance, interim zoning ordinance proposed by the planning commission. Importantly, interim zoning ordinance is very easily amended versus a regular zoning ordinance. So the intent of being a stopgap, I think the statute understands that there may be kinks along the road, and that's the ability for the township board to make amendments to the interim zoning ordinance to fix some of those kinks. And I think there were some kinks, discussed by the planning commission earlier today, where it's, hey, why do we have 3 commercial districts? That's, I think, a hangover of the county zoning ordinance. Does it make sense to have 3, or we just have 1? How do we protect how do we consider short-term rentals? That may have not been adequately addressed in the county zoning ordinance. Something that the township may want to address over a period of 3 years so they can have an interim zoning ordinance. But commercial districts, are they deep enough when they're next to some housing in certain areas of the township? What do we do about wind and solar with respect to the state legislation? Just some issues that may arise, but the intent of the interim zoning ordinance is to try to get most of what, it's like 99% or 95% of what's going to work, and then you may get nuances. And that's like any community. Most communities, when they have a zoning ordinance, they really amend it throughout their practice. So, Mr. Kushner, is that an adequate summary?
You did a great job. We met initially to form the planning commission. Van Mason was elected as the chairman, and Larry Binkleiner was elected as the secretary, and Steve Bowman is going to be helping with notes and minutes and stuff like that. We talked about the lengths of terms, rotating terms, and then we were each handed 2 packets like this. One is the final copy, one is the copy that was used as kind of a template. And let me tell you, there's a lot of writing in there. An awful lot of writing. So it's very different than, or it could possibly be quite different than what the county had. That's my interpretation. I didn't go through every page by page, obviously. But I did review it previous to receiving the paper copy on my phone. So several trees were killed in the process. We got lots of paper to look through. And we made a recommendation that the interim zoning ordinance be adopted, and that passed unanimously with everybody that's here.
Perfect. So with that, I'm going to transition into how zoning works. It is the planning commission, obviously the planning commission will be more responsible for zoning under the interim zoning ordinance. is you have zoning districts. So your township will be this map. Basically, the map is over there. So the township will be split into these colors, and in each district each color is a different district. So you have an agricultural district, you have a residential district, you have an industrial district, you have a commercial district. And in each zoning district, it specifies land uses that will be either permitted by right or permitted by special use permit. What it means by permitted by right is something that is always going to be deemed appropriate by the township being a certain zoning district. So let's say in the residential district, a single family home, that is going to be deemed appropriate for that particular zoning district under the circumstances that it meets some objective criteria, like the front yard is a certain size, the side yard is a certain size, the back yard is a certain size. All the person does is really go to the zoning administrator, gets a permit, and then they're done. There's no more review. It's not very quickly. On the other hand, you have special uses. So let's pick up a residential district again, and without, this is just a hypothetical. Let's say that it permits apartment buildings, but those are permitted by special use permit. So those may be, those are special uses are land uses that may be appropriate in the zoning district, but need some more stringent review to determine whether they're appropriate or not. And that stringent review is a public hearing before the planning commission. So you get mailing notice, publication notice, and then the planning commission would hear public comment on the proposal, as well as hear the applicant wants the proposal. What they would do is they would review that against a set of standards and say, is the land use adequately served by roads? Is it actually a traffic issue? Does it adequately serve by public utilities? So for that public hearing, and then they can determine whether they grant a special use permit or they deny the special use permit. So it's more of a review. It's not this objective numerical review. We're going to review against setbacks. There's some discretionary criteria like that will cause a traffic issue, and that's how special use is. The key individual to the zoning ordinance would be the zoning administrator. They would be doing, most of the day-to-day work of, hey, I'm going to put up a pole barn. Okay, let's see what the setback is and so forth. And here's your zoning permit to put up a pole barn. That's kind of the permitted by right. So they would have most of the under the interim zoning ordinance. Another body that is under the interim zoning ordinance is called the zoning board of appeals. So that's if, hey, I want to put up my pole barn. I think I met the 30-foot setback, but the zoning administrator said that I didn't meet the 30-foot setback, and he says that 25. Well, I disagree with this decision. Where do I go to contest that decision? So the township board would adopt what's called the zoning board of appeals. They would hear both sides and then make that determination. Other thing the zoning board of appeals will do is variances. So the example I gave to the planning commission, I think this is a decent example, is let's say someone inherited land from their grandparents, and they want to build a house there, and then they find out that, well, based on the conditions of the land, whether it's topography or it's a wet lot, that I can only build my house in the southwest corner of it, so I can't meet the setback requirements. So you can request something that's called variance, where in certain special circumstances, the setback requirements can be waived a bit to build it. You shouldn't grant variances a lot, but it's to deal with items where it may not be, the zoning ordinance cannot work. And what I told my commission, I tell you guys, is if there's too many requests for variances, that generally means you should amend your zoning ordinance. So that's zoning in a nutshell. That's how the interim zoning ordinance works. That's how basically any zoning ordinance works. That's how the county zoning ordinance works. Let's get to the recommended interim zoning ordinance. I'm going to go through sort of high-level content of this memorandum. I know that there's been a working group which has retained relative works. Township has, so you are familiar with the zoning ordinance. Has been electronically given to you, paper copies of it. But I think it's important for some of this content to be shared with you, so you understand how this was set up. So Williams Works, again, is a professional planning firm. The township has been subject to the management county zoning for many years. So their viewpoint is to ensure continuity with zoning regulation in the township. We wanted to at least use the county zoning ordinance as a template. There are, of course, changes. I think Mr. Bush really identified that there are changes, but from a base, we want to keep it, relatively familiar with the county. The interim zoning ordinance also based on the Costa County Master Plan, as well as the Costa County Future Land Use Map and Plan for the Township. So, aside from the kind of obvious changes in Costa County counties or Green Park Township, there's some substantive changes that we'll go through a little bit. Article 1, you see on page 11, talks about removing unnecessary text. Article 2, consolidating, there is multiple agricultural districts in the county zoning ordinance. Now there's just one agricultural forestry district. There's a removal of the R1 district from the county zoning ordinance because in Green Park County there was an R1 land. That's what it says here. So you didn't necessarily need R1. R1 was called something rural residential in the county zoning ordinance. Let's go to Article 2, but on page 2. Addition in the industrial district that requires special use approval for larger operations. Added land use developments, which are some developments that allow higher density but open area and special land uses throughout the township. So this can be sometimes unique to, let's say, a residential development where you allow a little bit more density to residential development, but in turn you trade it to, you need to have like a park space, kind of like a hall. It's like, well, we're going to allow houses to be built close together, but there's going to be more open space around it. Article 3, page 2, just kind of moving land uses around. New standards for mining operations. Mining operations and gravel pits are a hot topic. They have always been, at least the last 4 years or so, maybe more, topic that maybe the state is going to free up local control, sort of like with solar and wind potentially, to allow second mining. And what has been updated here in the draft is talking about new standards for standards of mining operations in section 5.4. And that's kind of I think a good segue into, not only did the planner look through the county zoning ordinance, but in some instances enhanced it. So like any zoning ordinance, many townships will have a zoning ordinance for 30, 40 years. The law changes over 30, 40 years, and some aspects of your zoning ordinance may not be lawful technically anymore, but it changed over time. A good example of this in 2015, there's a United States Supreme Court case that I had Gilbert, the town of Gilbert versus the United States, versus it's the Gilbert decision, and it talks about sign ordinances, or sign regulations and zoning ordinances, and the gist of that opinion is the Supreme Court doesn't allow you to regulate signs by content anymore, so you can't say a business sign must be this, a barber shop sign must be this, a real estate sign must be this. You have to regulate them in a content neutral manner, so not by the type of sign they are, but maybe by their size or their physical characteristics. That's an example. Site plan review was modified a little bit, Article 4, special land uses, procedures modified, Article 5. Zoning Board of Appeals, that whole provision was replaced for clarity of organization. Again, it's where one of those areas where I think you have an enhancement from the county zoning ordinance to comply with this enabling act. I'm thinking of a few months ago, maybe a little more than a few months ago, I was at a township that I was looking there, going to consider variance, and I was looking at the zoning board of appeals language and the zoning ordinance, and the selection of the zoning board of appeals did not reflect anything that the Michigan zoning neighborhood act said by the township, so we had to change that in the zoning ordinance. Very common. Administration, enforcement of penalties, added more or less the same, and then definition changes in Article 9. You'll see those. There's one of which is lead definition of conditional use. Some townships call special land use or conditional use, and sometimes you see zoning ordinances interchange the terms. You see sometimes you interchange special use permit, special land use permit, conditional use permit. All of those generally mean the same thing. It's confusing when you use the same term to mean the same thing. It's a principle of law that you want that each definition should mean something else. In this case, there's two definitions that essentially meant the same thing, so they try to fix that. And now let's look at the zoning map. Big changes there are rezone two properties in the township from ag, which is no longer district, to AF, which is agricultural forestry, so there's two ag districts, remove one. And then rezone the two manufactured home parks to manufactured home park district. So I think there's also references to this updates to manufactured home parks. Manufactured homes are subject to state preemption in various ways. What I happened in the past, before I was practicing, was some communities decided that they didn't want manufactured homes, so they would make all sorts of regulations in their zoning ordinance, like, hey, your roof needs to be pitched at this certain amount. So then they tried to make it so you never have a home, so the state said, well, that's not very fair, you can't, this is really amazing. So that is in a nutshell, a lot of information, a summary of a lot of information in front of you. What I think would be appropriate is maybe, you can ask questions to me about citizens and ordinance and maybe discuss it a little bit. Otherwise, I can also have some other frequently asked questions, at least I'm thinking of one that I know people have asked before. Please don't go ahead. So, some people may be worried, like when a township adopts a new zoning ordinance, what happens if my property complies with the county zoning ordinance, but it doesn't comply with this one? And is the township going to send out a zoning administrator writing a ticket and then taking it? The answer is no. So if you existed prior in time, there's something called lawful non-conforming use, which most people means grandfathering, which is essentially your use that was lawful before the enactment of the zoning ordinance can continue. So you don't have to be worried that, if I had something approved, let's say my pole barn didn't meet the setback standards, it meets the ones of the county, but it doesn't meet the one of the township, well, nobody's going to knock me down after this.
Well, essentially, everything that's in here that's in red, and this is, its final cut, will be gone.
Correct. So you have a clean copy in front of you, and then you have a red copy. The red copy is really good. These are the changes, the deletion that were made to the county zoning ordinance. There's a number of them, but the general format of the zoning ordinance is saying that, zoning ordinances can vary by township, by city, by village, by county. It can be drastically different, but I think you don't want to go too far off the rails if you adopt something completely, because that would be something that would be, perhaps shock people and not positive.
I'm assuming that the two different copies might have been provided anyway, but I had a conversation with the supervisor about having to read through 203 pages. I'd rather see the differences than read through the whole thing and not know what the differences are. So we got two copies and the differences are quite clear. They're all in there.
Yeah, that's something that, the public, let's say you decided to adopt the keep it here, all the this is that line, and there's the changes, it's helpful.
A lot of the language is updated to modern standards, correct? That's what you were saying.
Yeah, so that's one thing that the planner pointed out. I gave some examples of it, but I think what they did is, interim zoning ordinances are again stopgap ordinances. You're not going to be perfect, but I think they did a very good job of updating stuff. The challenge is when you have a professional helping you with, whether it's me helping with the zoning ordinance or a planner, is you have to make some judgment calls yourself, and then you see if the township likes it or not. But the nice thing with the interim zoning ordinance is it can be relatively freely amended without referendum too. So let's say the public says, hey, this provision is absolutely terrible. We have to change this. I try to put up your provision on accessory buildings. It's different now. I can't put my pole barn or a store on this stuff. You need to change it. That's something that the council board we can consider what kind of thing.
Can you explain a little bit the difference between just the ag and forestry?
Yeah, it's I know you chair the planning commission this year too. I know he's a little bit more intimately involved in that, but my understanding is that the zoning districts overlap very similarly with land uses.
Essentially, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So essentially, those two parcels that were A in our township, the ag district in the county zoning ordinance has language that says that there's some special either soil or other type of property to that district that would make it more useful as agricultural. It turns out though that neither of those parcels are being used that way anyway, and the state provisions can be put into the ag forestry district. So But it didn't make sense to have a special district for just two small parcels in the township.
And I think that's common, you see that quite a bit, I mean, communities that have an existing zoning ordinance, they start adding districts, and then they sometimes say, why do we have 15 different zoning districts? A lot of some of these look very similar, and consolidation is helpful. See, sometimes they have one zoning district. We've heard that.
That might be a good example for a lot of conforming use situation that I just mentioned, that if those folks wanted to do whatever it was, especially with that round, they can still do that, right? We can't make that away with them.
So the zoning board of appeals was rewritten, just for clarity.
Yeah.
That's in there.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a little bit combined with the, you can see it, for those of you that are I think it's section stuff, that goes through generally, the zoning board of appeals, section of the zoning ordinance looks, they all look very similar. So you get a choice of, 3 people or 5 people on the board of appeals, the statute gives you, but the initial one you need to really specify, this is what the zoning board of appeals can do, this is how the numbers are appointed, so you see a lot of zoning ordinances that are very similar.
Whether it's a change in the zoning request for permit or the zoning board of appeal, ultimately the recommendations are still brought to this board for vote.
Generally not. So usually it's going to, let's say you want to make an amendment, let's go through this, that's a very good question. So let's say you want to make amendments and then you're going to, that goes through the change, whether it's a change in the map or whether it's a change in the text. Let's say someone wants a special use permit. My understanding for doing this is then it goes to the planning commission. Let's say someone wants to build a pole barn and they're, we're determining whether they meet the setbacks. That decision goes to the zoning commission. Any appeals, besides special use permits, go to the zoning board of appeals. So you're really limited to making the policy, that's the role of the township board, making the policy of what our zoning looks like, what are the rules, and then we have others apply. You can change it so the township board maybe has final say over special use permits. There's pluses and minuses of that. You may want to just think about it. Yeah, because sometimes what people say is we like the planning commission to have ultimate say over special use permit because they are a appointed body and not as subject to elected pressure as you may be. So you have a land use decision and they can look at it effectively and apply the zoning ordinance maybe a little bit better than elected officials. But, everybody's subject to their own pressure.
The board of appeals that have 7 members are on the board.
Correct.
So we have to apply that.
Correct. I will say that in a township of this size, there's sometimes it's better represented to have an zoning board of appeals meeting in years. And it just really depends.
Do we need to get going on that, or do we wait for the problem?
You would wait till, I would say you would wait till you have a zoning ordinance adopted, and then you would adopt a standard board. It's not an emergency. Okay. So, you could even.
So we don't necessarily wait for an appeal, we should get the process rolling.
You get it rolling, yeah, it doesn't, I've done it both ways. I think you should do it, in best practice would be doing it before you have it. You have an appeal, but you appeal to it, and then you have to do it, you have to do it.
So, your question to the zoning board of appeals, do we second as the zoning board or the sub, is it about a 5-member, so there's 7-member or?
It would be, let's see what the.
7-member planning commission.
It's gonna either be 3 or 5.
It says 5, I
It
think.
says 5, and then it doesn't say 2 alternates. Probably says 2 alternates, figure out that 2 alternates.
Up to 2.
Yeah, and you typically have a turn alternate as, sometimes you can lose people on the board of appeals if it's a decision that, one of them gets you involved in, you have a planning commission or there.
And then I asked the question Saturday, similarly, and we voted today to adopt the interim zoning regulations here, those take effect immediately.
That's part of the,
Okay,
yeah.
we
No, we'll go through the whereas clauses a little bit, and then we'll talk about the action items. So, basically, whereas, of course, the planning commission has recommendations to zoning ordinance, whereas planning commission had access to all materials prepared by the professional planning consultant, whereas planning commission resolved, reviewed the draft ordinance, present its recommendations to the township board. Before that, there's an email to the county planning commission, which I gave, with the recommended zoning ordinance. We also did, I think, above and beyond the statute requires, so we gave the red line, we gave the memorandum that you have to the professional planners. We gave them some comments that were heard in public comment, which is pretty helpful. We want to get comments back for review and put together. Then it says, essentially, zoning ordinance, we expect that public health and welfare, page 2. You believe using the professional planning consultant and using the draft county zoning ordinance will help continuity of helping apply. It's not like you have willy-nilly that, the zoning ordinance hire professionals to do so for you and with others to review it. We had a working group, so work through it. We had a planning commission look through it, we had a town board look through it. And then there is desire to adopt the recommendation zoning ordinance with immediate effect. So the action items, these are important. Page 2, section 1, we would say the future township board hereby approves and adopts with immediate effect the interim zoning ordinance. It's outlined in exhibit A, so you would attach it to exhibit A of this document here. A map, as well as the text. Clerk will file and publish the immediately effective zoning ordinance, subject to section 4.1 of the zoning gaming act. This is interesting. So the statute says that it becomes immediately effective and then it says published. Most township ordinances you publish and then it becomes effective. This is a little bit different. That's how the statute reads that as well. And then there's a separate level of specific benefits enforceable, then everything remains in fact, and then section 3 says the effective date is immediate. So there's, if you read some of the resources for, the Attorney General and so forth, and the commenting by zoning ordinances, they say that it is kind of a freeze on zoning, it's a stopgap for principle. It's done to take local control, and then try to keep it, you have the best fit, and then you try to take that as you go to get a permanent zoning. Obviously, a permanent zoning ordinance would be subject to referendum. So let's say you work to that permanent zoning ordinance, and then people say, we don't really want the township, you got this interim zoning ordinance, we don't really want the township, that local control. We'll get the referendum. And that is how this document works. So I think the short answer to your question is yes, I think it would be and if any of you, have questions, you could ask if you want us to adopt this, you can say, I wish to adopt it, or something like this, with immediate effect as presented, something like that.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the interim zoning ordinance as presented.
And that's with immediate effect.
With immediate effect, correct, sorry about that.
You get a second, we go into.
Second, you have discussion, do you need a second for this?
Yes, second.
I guess they're free to discuss.
Yeah, no discussion further, as I mentioned, exhibit A, in that.
It's immediately effective instant zoning ordinance, so it's been packaged in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you'll see, includes the appropriate text in zoning map.
Gotcha.
So that's what you'll be voting on. That's essentially the plan, that's where I did review and the special plan that's prepared for you. For the
Is that a line to ask the administrative commission to talk a little bit?
No, I don't think it's out of line, I think it's appropriate.
Would you like to approach the board and give us your best recommendation since it's done?
Well, obviously, the planning commission, rather, they reviewed this and submitted it for your approval. I don't really have anything else to say about it, other than that, heard the same, essentially the same information we did, well, we could this earlier today. But certainly asking for answering questions on that.
How long has the commission been working in capacity committee?
The commission, well, the commission, we just met today. So prior to this, we had a work group which went through this, and we had several meetings. A lot of time spent on our own also, presenting it to Williams and Works, but some language things which they incorporated as well as the changes that they did to make sure it was a legal document.
Fred, with your experience in this township and this area, planning commission, are you completely satisfied with this implementation?
Because of the way it works, the interest ordinance, it gives us a lot of flexibility to change it as we go. To be very honest with you, it's an overwhelming document. To read through the entire thing and know exactly every word and how it's all going to be applied, there's a lot of material in it. But what I do like about the fact that it's an interim ordinance, and if we have up to 3 years to operate under this, we have the ability to make this ordinance work for us. The way I understand it, pretty much immediately, we can make changes that we need to make.
I'd like to publicly thank you and the committee for all the time and effort you put into this. I came in several times and saw you guys gather around the table, and I was just glad that I wasn't asked to be part of it. A lot of papers spread all about. Perhaps seems to be enjoying it. Yeah,
I don't think we had that, I don't know if it's true, but I know it was important.
Anybody else? Any questions for them? Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Board? Sarah? Want to move to a vote? Can we do a vote?
Tranical,
Yes?
Anderson,
Yes.
Edison, Rasmussen. Rego, yes. Warren,
Yeah.
Bruce.
Yes. Jordan's motion carried. 6-0. Okay, so, the board is now adopting the interim zoning ordinance. Members of the public comment. Is there anybody who would like to public comment at this time? Step up here. Podium. Yeah, please.
There'll be a check for Joe, yeah.
I congratulate you, I'll say you're lucky to have that on board, because I've been ready for
6 years.
And it's got a lot of valuable qualities and knowledge. I did have one question. At the county level, the county commission, in my experience, they could or can, and maybe that used to be, overrule the planning and zoning board and the board of appeals. Did you know, is that still in there, did you change?
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that.
Oh.
And I don't care if there's a way to The answer is, that one thing I will say is, there is active litigation in the township, so, we'll have to,
Yeah, no, but it's not unusual for an entity, I'm not gonna say township, there are different rules.
Anybody else, for public comments? Yes.
I was at the earlier meeting with someone, and the first thing I want to talk about is community garden. We're talking to Larry, and we have some plans for certain property in the area. Cliff Young's over here across the road along Mill Street, we thought he could, and then I can't remember, Larry mentioned, but I'd like to put the wheels grinding, something in the community with, approval, because the first time I asked for a community garden, I was told there's nowhere in Green Township for one. So, if we could get collaborating on spaces, whether it's down at the stone hatchery or different, we were talking about irrigation, maybe a solar pump that can water them, so we're getting the wheels grinding on that, and hopefully get something going for that time. Also, just dealing with the Goshen aspect of this and the invasiveness of that space of land and what it could do. Have you collaborated with any of the other communities that are going through the same thing as us with megasites, and how it's disrupted their communities and what they're doing to combat that in their communities, so that we as a state can work together and focus on light industrial, like greenhouses and things that are environmentally safe for that pristine property that feeds our aquifers, which the grass is water, we all do. Most of us have wells, so we want to protect it. Also, we're getting alarming effects from the solar and wind, and I was in the meeting when Todd was on the board, and he was all excited about this meeting, like all the meetings you guys have to go to, they're so boring and Lansing, and this was just wonderful, and he was talking solar and wind. So I don't know how they're pumping out the board members, bring it into our community, but we're absolutely opposed to it here. We want to keep this free of all of that. It's not environmentally safe. It was very concerning, the woman at the last meeting, scared for her grandchildren's future and wanting to do this, but we've got to realize Lake Erie just put a stop to going in their lakes, and there's ways to stop it, Okay. So I'm just saying, let's make sure we're collaborating with other communities, and education is power, and listening to just mainstream media is not the way to be educated on this. It's actually putting fear into families' homes. Okay?
Thank you. And I got, sure.
Jerry Elliott, I just want to say thank you for taking all the time and work. I do know I can say that but one of the questions I have, if it's appropriate, I don't quite understand what's going to happen if the county decides to contest any of the decisions that these zoning boards can make.
So that's a difficult question to ask. I think it's a case by case, depending on what the county does. I think that the township is usually directed to legal counsel to, the township believes that it's zoning, in place to be the effective land use decision to go to the township, and then the township directed legal counsel to take that.
Interesting. They always,
question, I guess you guys can't answer, but I just want everybody aware too that's here, you know, May 1st, they're supposed to go Goshen, go to the planning commission. So, today, Monday, that's Wednesday, I believe that's still going to continue, right? So, I just think that everybody needs to be, and hopefully you guys have looked over the zoning ordinances and the master plan and submitted something to the county as the concerns and questions and the red flags, because there's very many. And also the community be aware of those red flags on the master plan and the ordinance for when they go, because people will need to make a public comment. And it needs to be based off of that, not the CCP concern or any other type of concern. It needs to be based off of that. There's many concerns of Goshen is lacking, and if the county really wanted to protect us, and also your guys' ordinances moving forward, it should be, especially something of this magnitude, or with wetlands, or when there's air quality through the state permitting needed, before the planning commission ever even looks at an application, it should have to go through the state first, because that is an option. Because the county right now has an option to table this or to wait until state permitting is finished, or at least submitted for a started, because Goshen still has not submitted their permit application. So without the state knowledge and know-how of what to do with the wetlands and the stormwater runoff and everything else, the county can't know and make a decision that's safe for us. So it should have to be tabled, and everybody should hopefully be aware of that and be there Wednesday and make a comment. And if not, then hopefully somebody's looking into suing the Cass County, because they're putting us at risk. And they're supposed to be there to protect us, not to make decisions that have no weight behind them.
Thank you, everyone. Any others? Any other comment?
I'm going to make it quick, and I won't share, and I don't have to go to this kind of class. My name is Steele, and I actually wanted to address Kyle, your legal counsel here. Just a couple words of advice, and the atmosphere and the setting is hostile, but I'm really not getting really sincere. I really do. First of all, I've had friends of mine in my career as being a contractor. Discovery is the most important part of the process of onboarding. It is my study assessment, having spent the last year writing executive summaries and briefs for an advocacy for Goshen. Whatever law firm or law firms put this together did not perform due diligence. I'm not talking about the legal side, I'm talking about the needs and goals of the community. This is more important than understanding the law there, right? I do not believe that we have done that discovery, that assessment here, and that's a serious planning here. On a more personal note, if you're going to continue to make a career, particularly in municipal law, I recommend either buying a less expensive car or not parking it directly in front of the building. You understand what an insult and a slap in the face that is to communities like Paris, Michigan, that have been targeted because of our low income status. A little bit of empathy, a little bit of sensitivity, a little bit of reading the room and understanding what the people in this community have actually hired to do. Okay? Like I said, I understand that this environment is combative. I mean this as genuine and sincere advice. All you had to do was send a button letter. All right, I'm sorry. I said it was weird.
Thank you. Any other additional comment?
Wednesday, you must have a meeting, is it what time?
met tomorrow, would I go here or would I go to the county?
You would go here. It's gonna be a process, right, with the administrative to set up, those functions.
Okay. Thank you. I don't want to. I'm tired of sitting around.
Any other additional comments?
Once again, I just want to thank you guys for doing everything you do in the community. It's heartfelt for all of you. I know we're receiving a lot of abuse over and over. And I think just the best thing that we possibly do, and I'm so thankful for the people that are stepping up to do the zoning and everything they do in the speedy way you did it. And I'm sure you did a lot of work to make this happen quickly. So hands off to you, thank you. And just like I said, about you to all know you're appreciated beyond belief. And no matter what I can say or you know that the community is behind you. So thank you.
Any additional comments?